Connection. I am Christina Matheson, your host, and today we have Karen Signoracci with us. I am so happy to have you. I want to read a little bit about her, and then we're going to let her tell us all about what it is that she does. So, Karen Signoracci is a strategic nonprofit consultant providing strategic consultation and dedicated client services for nonprofits throughout Long Island. Karen provides high-level project management and development planning with a focus on aggregating data, building infrastructure, and increasing efficiency for nonprofit organizations and agencies. With over 20 years of experience, Karen has created feasibility studies for developing capital campaigns and the readiness it takes to achieve an organization's development objectives. Proficient in board development and valuation, Karen's team creates board of director growth programs by spearheading potential candidate assessment and vetting their credentials to ensure a perfect match between individual and cause. Karen has vast experience with grant writing, board development, and major gift programs. So there's two other pages of this, but I'd rather that we hear it from you. So I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you. Spanish and sociology. I speak Spanish, I speak Italian, and I thought I was going to be a social worker. That was my plan.
Right.
And I started classes to get my MSW and just really didn't love it. Just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And I ended up working for a small nonprofit in Chicago, and we had a big scholarship gala. It was the first Monday of May every year. And we put all our efforts into this gala to raise money for scholarships. It was a high school. And I learned about raising money. I learned about events. I learned about the power of philanthropy. And that was the start.
You were hooked.
I was hooked.
What was the magic for you? Was it that you could make change? Was it that you were making a difference? Like, did you feel that it was so the work was so important, or did you just love the buzz of it, like the hustle of it?
I loved the hustle of it. Honestly, I loved the thrill of the sale.
Yeah.
You know, it was the sale of getting someone to commit, whether it was $100 or $250,000. It was this thrill of getting them to commit in an empathetic fashion, having a conversation with them and saying, this is what we're going to do with this money. We're going to be a good steward of it. And if you invest in this project, X amount of kids will receive a scholarship, or we're going to build this playground for children that need it, or whatever the case may be. But there definitely, and there still is a little bit for me now, all these years later, the thrill of making that sale, of getting someone to agree to that gift.
It's really different than so many other careers, because with that sale, so to speak, you're doing such great things. You're making such positive change for people. I had never worked in nonprofits. I only worked for for-profit companies. So it strikes me as just a very, very different opportunity. But you always know you're doing such great things with that.
Well, I always say that, the nonprofit community needs strategic people. They need consultants. They need good accountants. They need good attorneys. They need real estate professionals. They need people that are willing to roll up their sleeves and do the work. And nonprofits need to run like a business and run, with some efficiency, or else they're not going to be able to do all those things that we said: build the playgrounds, give out scholarships, get books to kids in need, have mental health services, have programs for people dealing with Alzheimer's, dementia. I mean, you name it. The list continues.
So you started out in this, and did you immediately know, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do? Like, what led you to down the path? I know you've worked for a lot of different groups, or you've worked with a lot of different groups. How did you get from point A to point B? So before you answer, we always on this show talk about the power of connection. And there must be a giant connection piece for you, where first I was here, then I was here, then I was here. Like, how do you envision that as it happened?
Well, there were a couple of connection pieces. I remember early on in my career being invited to sit at a board meeting for a large nonprofit, and I was there to observe. And I remember listening to the dialogue and listening to the financial report and thinking to myself, there's so much that goes into this. I remember early in my career having been tasked with managing the database. And I knew zip codes, I knew people's dog's name, I knew their children, I knew when their last gift was. And I started to put it all together that there's so much in this business behind the scenes, so many critical things that you use in a business setting, nonprofits the same, data, tracking, conversations. For me, relationships. I remember also early in my career approaching a few families, with the team I was working on for money, for philanthropy and their mission at work. And I remember seeing one family say, all right, we'll do $1 million if they do $1 million. And I remember thinking to myself, people like to be part of a moving train. People like to be part of momentum. And that always stayed with me. That always
That's
stayed
a
with
really
me.
powerful thing. So you were just originally looking for the first $1 million, and they volunteered somebody else for $1 million because they wanted it to be.
Yeah, that was the first. That was $3 million that ended up coming to be on a $10 million campaign.
Wow.
So, but that's the way it's supposed to work. You're supposed to start at the top, and now I know. Now I'm not one of the team members. I'm sometimes the person leading that, that charge. And so now I know the strategy, the strategy behind it. Another connection for me was there was a philanthropist that was involved with one of my first jobs, and he agreed to pay the salary that I was going to earn. And that's how much he felt the school needed someone to do the work that I was tasked with doing, which was marketing and development and community outreach, that he said, a portion of my gift will fund this position. And he took a tremendous chance on me. And after 3 years, I was successful there, and I moved on to other things. But that first start, that was a connection. And he was a philanthropist. He was a businessman. But he applied that to the nonprofit sector.
That is so, it's so different. I think that people that are in for-profit businesses, we almost don't think about all of the wheels that have to spin to make a nonprofit work. It is a business just like a for-profit business. Do you find that when you work with nonprofits, and I know there's always a board of directors, is the idea that the board of directors is going to be integral in getting this whole business structure working, or is it usually some other reason? Like, is there rhyme or reason on how people pick their board of directors?
I always say the board of directors is the backbone. They're there to set vision, to set strategy, to set the budget, to hire the key staff. They're not there to order toilet paper and execute the programs and, worry about, what the office hours are. So if you are on a nonprofit board, you should take that role seriously. There's a lot that goes into it. Now, on the downside, there's a lot of people that agree to be on the board without knowing what it entails. There's a lot of people that are asked to be on the board that probably shouldn't be there. But the right people in the right seats, they're steering the ship.
So what advice would you give an existing nonprofit if they were looking to be more efficient, as you say, or, as part of the strategic consulting that you do? What do you look at, and what's usually the problem or the change point?
I would say one of the first things you could do is get your board together, not in the confines of a meeting with reports and financials and a status update, but get them together for, lack of a better term, a retreat, or like a kumbaya, let's sit together, let's break bread, and let's talk about our strengths, let's talk about our weaknesses, let's talk about what we're excited about, let's talk about what's challenging ahead of us. Let's talk about what we want this organization to look like in 5 years. And if that retreat, kumbaya, whatever you like to call it, is structured correctly, everyone around the table will get in their car to go home, and they'll feel engaged, and they'll feel inspired, and they'll be rattling off in their brain, I got to call so-and-so, I got to get so-and-so to do this, I got to get someone connected to this mission. They're inspired. They're inspired. Their octopus arms will go out, talk about connections. They'll think of who can I connect to this nonprofit? Who would benefit from hearing about this mission? Who is looking for something to do? And that's that's the advice I would give, to take a break from the business of it,
Yeah.
and have a real like retreat and intuitive moment.
So it's half team building and half get to know your board.
I'd say that's true. Yes, I'd say that's true. I mean, I remember early in my career too, I was working with a client, and this particular client had, I'd say, 6 or 8 board meetings a year, which is a lot. And we had decided as the leadership with the executive director to make the December meeting a dinner meeting. And he said, there's very strong power in breaking bread together. And I used that phrase already.
Yes.
But you build your team, you have a meal, you talk about other stuff.
Yeah.
Like we all have a real life.
Yeah.
When we're not doing our
Yes.
work life, professional life. Although for you and for me, they all blend and
Yeah,
mesh
they
together.
intertwine. They
But-
do.
And so, yeah, it's team building. It's getting to know each other. It's forcing some uncomfortable conversations in the confines of a meeting, but
Yeah.
then knowing as soon as those doors open, we're people. When we're in this room together, we're a board. But as soon as those doors open,
Yeah.
we're still people that have a lot going on, usually, in our lives.
From somebody that's on the outside, so I have a nonprofit now that I just recently started, but from somebody that's never been a part of the nonprofit world before, it's been really quite an awakening for me just to get involved. And you've been gracious enough to give me some wonderful advice, and I'm grateful. I think that, one of the challenges is, like, you choose your board and you want to be well positioned. But I look at other nonprofits and I think they have this tremendous board of directors that probably aren't even all acquainted. And then the chairman, the chair is out, and then they have to bring all these new people in. Is it normally like restructuring all the time? How does it usually work? Does a board have the ability to do that?
Well, you have bylaws.
Right.
You have term limits. You have parameters. But at the same time, people's lives change.
Mhm.
Someone might perfectly envision being the chair for 3 years, and then something happens where they can't fulfill that. It's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. Some of those boards you're looking at, maybe they've been together for years,
Yeah.
but in a different capacity. Maybe there's the leadership at the organization changes, thus the board might change. Maybe they've gone through crisis. Maybe they've gone through huge growth.
Right.
You don't know. You don't know what's really happening.
I read an article the other day that talked about the challenges that nonprofits had during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And how all of their fundraising efforts were completely halted for the most part. What did you see then? Did you see anything good come of it for nonprofits?
I was often found on my soapbox telling anyone that would listen that you cannot live and die by your events. It's all well and good. You have a great party at whatever place,
Right.
with whatever served and honoring whomever. But if you're not pulling 10 or 15 people from that event that you can follow up with to be on the board for a major gift, to get
Right.
more involved, you're just throwing these great parties. And yes, they raise money, and yes, they have meaning. But what happens if there's a natural disaster? What happens if the generator goes out? What happens if there's a global pandemic? And sure enough, that's what happened. All these events couldn't take place.
Mm-hmm.
So I told my clients at the time, I said, here's what we're going to do. The phone, it dials. You can dial the numbers. It's not just the apps.
Right.
You're going to pick up the phone. You're going to call your top donors, and you're going to say, how are you doing? How's your family? Here's how our organization has pivoted in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we need your help. And a lot of clients raise more money than they had in years past.
Wow.
So my advice to my clients at the time was stay the course.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that the bottom line is relationships, connections, and don't be afraid to say, this is what we're doing. We need help. And you never make assumptions.
Just ask.
People were sitting on cash. Just ask. People were feeling very emotional.
Yeah.
People saw tremendous grief in their life. maybe they lost someone, maybe they lost out on a graduation or a wedding or an opportunity. Maybe they gained something. So we never make assumptions. You put it out there.
It's such a, I'm one of those that gets the silver lining out of every cloud. And I see how that could be, but I also am always preaching about the phone as this magical device that connects you with other people. And there is a bit of magic in hearing another human's voice.
Absolutely.
Because as a society, we've gotten into texting, and I understand it's more convenient for most people. They can reply when it's easy, but hearing the sound of other people's voices and physically meeting in person is such a powerful relationship builder. And also, I think it comes down a lot to, do you believe in your mission? What is your mission? Are you passionate about that? How have you seen that evolve in terms of you've worked with different groups and, maybe a change in leadership or somebody inspired the passion for that organization and it was successful? How do you implement that?
Well, I agree with you on the phone. I do think it's a magical tool, and I always say that when you're on the phone, smile, because people can hear it in your voice.
Yes.
And as far as the mission, for various nonprofits, the mission is different things to different people. Someone might support your nonprofit because they had a loss and this triggers something for them. Mm-hmm. Someone might support your nonprofit because they believe in you and they're your friend and they want to see you succeed. Someone might support a nonprofit because they had a similar experience where they want to give back. Right. They want someone to have maybe some good care or a program that they needed at a critical time. And you can't, there's no barometer on that. You can't measure that. And that's why I always say, there's different fits for different people. There are some people that are very philanthropic and veterans is their thing. And they would help veterans on this island. And there's work to do there. I've done a lot of work with Alzheimer's families, with Long Island Alzheimer's Dementia Center. There are people that feel very strongly about that disease and how difficult it is. And that's where their philanthropic commitments might land. And you don't know. You don't know. What's important to one person may be different for somebody else. Right. And that's okay.
And if you're calling people, you get to learn about that.
You sure do.
Or if you're meeting them in person. So I'm a huge fan of the in-person, hey, let's meet for 10 minutes even. Because I don't think we take enough time to know the people that are around us. I really, there's a lot that I learn on a daily basis now that I'm trying harder to put a little time into getting to know more people, because I think we take it for granted that those around us are just that superficial version of what we see maybe at work or as neighbors. And that must be a powerful tool in the nonprofit world of who do you know and how do you get connected.
I mean, if you want to take a snapshot of connections and networking, this morning I had breakfast at 8:30 at the Sweet Hollow Diner.
Tell me more.
There was nobody sitting there just leisurely having their meal, probably en route to the beach or something else. No, there were suits, there were ties, there were people with portfolios, there were people sitting there, and you could see the context of the conversations. Yeah. It was business meetings, it was networking. And so whether it was an hour, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, coffee, or a full meal, plenty of business, plenty of networking going on. If you want to network or you want to introduce people to a nonprofit, that's when I would pull on some of the events and say, listen, if you'd like to learn about the mission of Mondays at Racine, come to their event next month and see their mission at work and learn a little bit about it. If you want to learn about another nonprofit, check out their website. Websites are a powerful tool. The first place we go to look for anything. Looking for a nail salon, looking for a nonprofit.
We're Googling
we
all
Google
of
it up. We search it up, as my kids say. Search it up. But a lot of nonprofits have very powerful videos on there. 90 seconds tells a story.
Yeah. The story really is key. And I think that with anybody who's ever done marketing, we all know that there's a story that has to be told. With a nonprofit, it may be a little bit more powerful. And I think that for-profit businesses should take a little bit of a lesson from the nonprofits and how they go about, building those relationships. So you've worked with so many and you still work with so many. What's one of the cool things that you've done, like that stands out? Well, I did this events one. Like, what's something cool that you've done?
Full disclosure, right now in my car, I have 150 orange bags, drawstring bags.
Uh-huh.
And I got these bags from the Allied Foundation. And the Allied Foundation started their mission of helping babies stay clean, dry, and healthy. And they were giving out to moms in need diapers through pediatricians' offices, through other places. Well, recently, the Allied Foundation realized that there is a huge awareness component that needs to happen for underserved girls and their periods and access to those supplies. So I have a client that will use 150 drawstring bags for young girls that may not have access to period supplies. And so before I came here, I loaded up my car to give these bags to a client. And I had one of those moments like, Karen, you literally jammed into your car all these bags,
Right.
so the Allied Foundation can carry out their mission. And I'm not saying this like to toot my horn. I'm just saying, like, I have those moments all
It's
the
cool to
time
be
where
a
I'm
part
like,
of it.
it's pretty cool that I'm gonna help get these to where they need to be.
Yeah.
Another moment that I've had immense pride on a larger scale, was when I saw a $1.5 million facility come together because of the money that was raised. And that facility was a 12-bed hospice unit at Good Shepherd Hospice at Mercy Medical Center, and families within 2 weeks of that ribbon cutting ceremony were able to be with their loved ones in their final moments. So I saw how we started the fundraising, how we knocked down some walls, had an architect,
Right.
ribbon cutting, and that was a very cool moment also. And those are two topics I just brought up that make people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And may get people to just shift a little bit in their seat, but they're happening. They're happening right here on this island. I probably could come up with a few more because I have a lot of those moments where I say, how the heck did I get here?
Yeah.
But
Because you're in the business of helping affect change that needs to happen. So the way that I see it, you're really a resource and a tool to help these organizations achieve their mission.
I'm trying to connect people.
Yeah.
Which is what you said is your
Yeah.
theme here. So maybe I'm the middleman, but if I can connect.
The middleman is powerful.
I can connect clients. I can connect donors with potential nonprofits. I can reconnect existing donors to their. So it's the tentacles. It's the octopus arms going out.
That's just amazing. And a lot of people go through their whole life and they don't get to feel that, not even once. I think that that's so powerful and that your job is so unique and you're just helping. I think that is an amazing story. I know that you have a radio show.
Yes.
Tell me how you got into that and how does it work?
I have a friend that's on the radio also,
Mhm.
103.9 Long Island News Radio. His name's Mitch Goldberg, and he decided to have his show. And he was working with the station, and he said to them, you should really maybe call Karen and just talk to her. So I went down to the radio station thinking I was just going to talk to them.
Right.
And then they asked me to record, a 20-minute,
Right.
whatever you call it. And then the next day they asked me, would you be willing to have a show on Long Island News Radio and focus on the nonprofit community? So it's called The Big Picture. It airs on Tuesdays at 4 o'clock. My goal with the show is that people listening, whether live or on the app or on my website later on, that they hear something that they didn't know about, that they learn about a new project, a new nonprofit, a new service opportunity, and it inspires them to get involved, to go back to their place of business, to go back to their block, their temple, their church, whatever the case may be, and say, I want to get involved in this. And, one of the best examples I give a lot of my clients when we're talking about community outreach and, the power of a team was March of Dimes. Years ago had an amazing campaign. I think it was a national campaign. It was called Blue Jeans for Babies. This was back when wearing blue jeans was like a unique offering.
Yeah.
People were dressed. And on Fridays, if you paid, I think it was $5, you could wear blue jeans. And that was for March of Dimes, blue jeans for babies. And all of these offices, law firms, accounting firms, marketing firms, ad agencies, real estate, they were all doing this together. And they would give out these stickers. So I paid my $5 for blue jeans for babies. And I thought about that, and I'm like, that is the workplace at work. And
Yes.
if somebody hears something, and now obviously jeans, everybody wears jeans, whatever they want.
Right.
But maybe they'll hear something and say, you know what, we're going to collect diapers here at this office, and we're going to get them to the Allied Foundation. Or we're going to have a book drive here, and we're going to get those books to the book fairies. Or we're going to all raise money and give it to a cancer organization or an organization that we feel together we want to make a difference. And that's my hope with the show. That's my hope, that people listen.
That's
and they
great.
want to be
You know,
inspired.
I love that concept of doing something as a group, pulling a group of people that work together, more together because they're giving back together. So that's a beautiful concept, and the fact that you're kind of pushing that along, that's a great thing. I mean, I don't know. I used to think that my job was the greatest, but I feel like your job is right up there. Like, that's very, very cool what you do.
I am lucky to say I don't see it as a job.
You love it.
I love it. It becomes a part of your life. I'm hoping that my kids pick up on something, something I've dragged them to, or they've learned about. I'm hoping that the nonprofit community on Long Island continues to grow. You know, in this country, 1 in 14 people are employed by a nonprofit. It's a huge part of our society.
Yeah.
It's just a huge part of our growth as a country too, and people don't necessarily realize that. So it's not a job. It really is what I do every day. And if I can connect people and I can talk to people and build relationships, it's a good day.
It's a beautiful thing. So how can people find you?
They can go to my website, karenscs.com, and you'll see all the past radio shows, some photos, a little bit of my background. It's a teaser, because the best thing to do is maybe get together.
Right.
Meet one-on-one.
Right.
Have a conversation.
I love that. So we are out for today. Thank you for joining us for The Power of Connection with Karen Signoracci. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was great.